Online dating is now a £1.7 billion industry. 1 in 3 British people now find their dates online. But there's a threatening side to this type of dating. The National Crime Agency said that this type of rape was on the rise. And actually they said that only 17% of this type of rape was actually reported. The Online Dating Association was set up in 2013 by a group of dating websites to self-regulate their industry. We tried to get an interview with them, but they refused to speak to us. So I'm going to investigate what can be done to prevent this type of crime, as there was a recent high-profile case of a serial rapist finding his victims on a well-known dating website. March this year, 50-year-old father of 3, Jason Lawrence, was sentenced to a minimum of 12.5 years in prison for raping 5 vulnerable women in their 40s and 50s. He met these women on one of the largest dating websites in the UK, Match.com. 4 of Lawrence's victims had reported him as a rapist to the website, but it did not delete his profile or tell the police. Match told the court it could not remove Lawrence's profile because he'd not breached their terms and conditions. He'd convinced women into contacting him from personal email accounts, so there was no trace of his crimes on the website. One of Lawrence's rape victims was a widow. He raped her in her own home after their on-off relationship ended.
It's difficult to put into words the effect this assault had on my life. I feel tainted and spoiled, and I'm left with a fear of being pinned down. My home is no longer the haven it was, with cherished memories of my late husband and children. It's now the place where I was violated by this man.
Another of Lawrence's rape victims was a 44-year-old woman he forced himself on in a hotel in St Ives, Cambridgeshire, tying her up with her own tights. She's still recovering from the experience.
I get shaky and scared when doing day-to-day things, like walking the dog. I feel worthless and ashamed at what he did to me. I honestly thought I was going to die.
Jason Lawrence raped his victims in several areas in the Midlands, so I'm going there to find out more. The judge in Lawrence's trial, Gregory Dickinson, handed down a hefty sentence here at Derby Crown Court. He said he hoped lessons had been learnt from this case. He recommended that there should be one authority where people can report online date rape, a kind of a central authority, and he thinks there should be an automatic system of referral to the police. The police force in Derbyshire led the case. Detective Chief Inspector Alison Rigby was the officer in charge.
I would like to think that this case has given dating sites the opportunity to review the processes that they have in place to make sure that they do have robust measures to remove people when a complaint's made to them, not necessarily when a complaint's made to the police. But I do think that work with certainly the National Crime Agency and the Online Dating Association, there needs to be work done collectively to legislate so that there is stricter and firmer guidance as to what can and can't be done, and I don't think that's in place at the moment. If dating sites receive a report, that they signpost a victim to the appropriate agency, ask them if they want them to report that to the police, ensure that they will support, that they will help the police with the investigation if they can do that, but not everybody will want to report an offence. That has got to stay down to that individual's own personal choice. A process that highlights that there's an individual there that is looked at and reviewed in a timely manner. So they've got one process that if somebody makes a complaint, they can very quickly look to see have there been any previous complaints, and what was the severity of the other complaints, to actually then remove somebody and off their website very quickly so that members who are on there feel safe. The judge's comments was that there should be more robust processes in place, and I do agree with that. And I think in years gone by, online dating, it's not been as popular as what it is now. So it might have been that 5 or 10 years ago, some of the mechanisms that weren't in place then was right not to be in place then. But I think now with the popularity of it and with the increase of offences being committed, there needs to be something more robust in place so that people still have the confidence to go and date online knowing that they're safe.
I'm going to the Houses of Parliament to talk to the MP Tim Lawton about holding dating websites like Match.com accountable for getting rid of sexual predators on their sites.
Match, which is the largest dating website company in the world, has got something like 92 million people worldwide. In the UK, 9 million Brits have logged on to dating websites. So this is affecting an awful lot of people. But what hasn't happened, it's quite clear, is the checking and vetting processes that those website companies actually use. And at the moment, it appears to be completely free rein, that whatever your record, criminal record, if you're a sexual predator, as Jason Lawrence was later described after he was convicted, then it's not clear what Match.com or other websites are doing about it to protect those people who are using those websites in good faith. Public money should not be used at this stage if the industry actually isn't doing everything it could do to make sure that its customers are safe. And I'm not convinced yet that the industry is actually doing that. There are companies who are making money out of dating websites. So they should be using that money to make sure their customers are properly protected. So if we need to have, as I think we do, a proper vetting system, which certainly to start with involves a clear reporting mechanism and a clear takedown mechanism. So if somebody goes onto a website, recognises somebody who's got a conviction, has got a record as a sexual predator, they should report that to the website company straight away, and the website company is obliged to do something about it. I think the next level we need to go to is to see whether routinely anybody putting their profile on a dating website should have that cross-checked with the Sex Offenders Register before that profile is accepted on a website. And I think we need to certainly have ways where they can cross-check with other dating websites as well to see if somebody has been reported on numerous occasions, so clearly is a serial offender, even if they're not actually a criminal offender. All these sorts of things the industry itself could and should be doing before we get into the realms of extra regulation and extra legislation, which then bring in the police and all sorts of other costs and bureaucracy attached.
I wanted to ask Match.com what they're doing to keep customers safer online. I've emailed Jenny Mitchell from Match.com's PR team in the UK several times about a documentary about Jason Lawrence, and she hasn't replied. So now I'm emailing Carl Gregory, who heads up the entire team in the UK. He's the CEO. I'm asking him for some answers. I want to know what Match.com are doing to increase their security, to stop sexual predators like Jason Lawrence targeting innocent victims. So I'm just going to send him an email and let's just see what he says. We're outside Match.com's UK head office in London. They refused to give us an interview on camera, but they did answer our questions by email. When asked why they didn't remove Lawrence's profile when users reported him to them as a rapist, they said, when people move beyond what we're able to see, it was very difficult for us to gather information to report the matter to the authorities. So what are Match doing now, following the Lawrence case? How are they dealing with reports of rape? Well, they've got a zero tolerance policy, they say, and they encourage people to report matters like this to the police. They've also got a report of concern button on their site. The judge in Lawrence's case, and also MP Tim Lawton, made certain suggestions. Match says they're looking to change their policies according to this, and also do this while respecting privacy laws. Match admitted to me that they hired personal safety charity, the Susie Lamplugh Trust, following the Lawrence case, to spot members that pose a risk to other members.
We worked with Match, we did a desktop review of their policies and procedures. We helped them look at how they currently worked and what we felt could be improved to make things safer. They were very receptive to this work, they were very open to working with us, and at the end of the work we did with them, they asked us to write a proposal for the wider online dating sector of what would a safer dating industry look like, so that's what we did. And we sent that to the ODA, and we're hoping to start work with them shortly on some of the recommendations that we made. So the Susie Lamplugh Trust proposed to the Online Dating Association some of the things that were said by the judge after the Lawrence ruling, actually, that the police and the dating sector work much more closely together, that information shared across the dating sector so that perpetrators are identified and they can't move from site to site if their behaviour is concerning. So you need a group in the middle who understand the sorts of issues that are coming up, who can work with the Online Dating Association to say, are you aware of this? Are you aware of this? So that they're always up to date with the things that are happening, and that there is a real that safety is put right, in the centre of the businesses, the very successful businesses that they're running.
In the wake of the Jason Lawrence case, how will this initiative protect people from sexual predators online?
I think the online dating industry just needs to recognise that this is something that is happening, and they need to work with the violence against women and girls sector, and they need to work more closely with the police, and they need to work more closely together to identify perpetrators, but also if they have any reports or allegations against anybody using the site, that they need perhaps have a watch list between them, so that they know that they could take somebody off the site if they needed to.
How do you recognise sexual predators online?
It might be in some of the messages that they've sent, the words they've used. You might be able to you might recognise key phrases in it that suggest that this person is grooming, or that they're being coercive or they're being manipulative. So it's things like that. It's patterns of looking at things. So, for instance, if somebody's viewing a profile, 100 times in the middle of the night or something, that would raise alarm bells, that sort of thing. So you may look for. You may look at the way that somebody speaks to somebody, or that person may have multiple names or multiple pictures that don't belong to them. You may see that they're across multiple sites. So there's all sorts of clues that suggest that somebody isn't quite who they seem to be, or that they're misusing the site. But you really need, ideally in every dating organisation, you'd have one person who dealt with those sorts of complaints, so that they could always be skilling themselves up to recognise this sort of behaviour, and also be working with the police and the violence against women and girls sector to understand what the trends were, but also so that they could get counselling for the vicarious trauma if they were dealing with difficult things coming in. You need to make it easier for people to report. That's the other thing I should have added.
The Lawrence case isn't unique. I met a woman who had been raped by a man she met on another dating website.
I've never reported to police what happened.
How has it left you feeling?
I feel like I can't trust myself or anyone else anymore. I've not had another relationship, and I don't know if I will have another relationship. I feel quite sad about that. One part of me says it'll be okay, but another part says, how do I know that? I know the worst that can happen now. If I'd been murdered, I wouldn't have had to have any of these feelings at all. I thought I was quite a good judge of character. I thought I would have been able to make myself heard, that I didn't want this to happen. I have a good job. I was wearing trousers. He was driving, so he hadn't had anything to drink. I had 2 glasses of wine. I let my guard down, and he said I could come in and use the toilet. I texted my friend to say I was okay.
Did he hurt you?
You can't see how he hurt me. There's nothing to look at. I lay very still, and I still can't believe I didn't say anything or do anything.
How many people have you told?
I told my friend, and they said counselling would help. It has helped, but I still wouldn't tell the police.
Would you tell a central referral line if it could be done completely anonymously?
I don't know. It depends how many people would know and what they do with that information that I told them. I wouldn't want anyone else to know how stupid I feel. I don't want him to do it to anyone else, and that worries me as well. It might be good if you could give details anonymously so that they couldn't identify you.
Could dating websites do more?
I wouldn't use one again, which is sad because it's affected me in lots of ways. People will lose faith in them if they can't make them safer to use.
Rape counselling service SV2 works with victims of online date rape. Claire Vickers is one of the counsellors there. What more can be done to protect people from online dating sexual predators?
I think having a cross-check with the Sexual Offences Register would be great, but offenders that are known about aren't the worry really for me. It's offenders that aren't known about the difficulty. I think the Online Dating Association could be the ones that got their act together to put regulatory powers over and to have a really reputable type of dating website where it was governed and they had powers to restrict people, and and that might encourage people not to sign up for those websites. What we could offer is anonymous reporting. So they will be able to give the details of the perpetrator, what happened, where they met them, perhaps even the profile of the person, but not give their name and address to the police. So the police can then build that up into their own data to be used nationally, so that if that person's then name comes up in any other report or anonymous report across the country, it will then be linked with the perpetrator. The police can then come back to us and say, we've actually think that this person is doing this across the country, would now your person like to come forward and make a formal complaint.
And if nothing's working, if dating websites aren't changing their policies, aren't protecting them from sexual predators, should there perhaps be legislation to protect people and to prevent date rapes?
I think it's people power that it will come down to, that if people stop using them, that's money counts, and if women didn't use them because there wasn't proper legislation in place, like if we have more than 3 reports of your behaviour, you won't be able to come back on, and we will check your credit card, and we will check your history of with other online dating sites as well. That sort of real control over dating websites would then enable people to go to the ones that they felt monitored that the best. So I think people have really got to use their own voices and go to the ones that they feel are offering the best service and the safest. The Investigative Powers Act could help monitor sexual predators online, and should do, because that's what it's about. But if that's okay if the person's known to them. I think what's difficult is if Lawrence went undetected for 7 years that we know of. So as long as the person is known to us, then they should be monitored, and they should be able to be monitored.
UK-based dating website Asian Date caters to the British Asian community. This site claims it's taking a safer approach.
We vet every single profile that comes onto our website. So we have a dedicated team that goes to the profile, make sure they are a legitimate person. We also have a dedicated ID verification service which checks people's passport and driving license numbers. So we can really match people to who they are, and if they're not, we are not going to allow them on the website, and it's as simple as that. If there's anyone that we feel that is violating any of our terms and conditions, we're very, very, I'm very firm and very harsh in saying, look, if we get a complaint from a user about another user, we have a one warning kind of procedure. If that user then continues to go on and message other people, then we are more than happy to remove them from our database. It's very hard for us to control anything that goes offline after community platform. It's very hard for us to control anything after that. I mean, we are always here to support anyone. If anyone does ring or email in or ask us for advice and support, if a member comes to us and they don't want us to contact the police and contact the authorities, then unfortunately without them we can't do anything, right? If I go to the police and I report a crime and say, hey, this person is reported, the police are going to want to contact the member. Now, if the member's not willing to cooperate in those circumstances, then we really can't take that forward in any way. All we can do is, report the member to the police, the person that is violating our terms, and that's as much as we can really do again. And we will monitor that going forward. Technology is a great thing right now, and I'm sure we will see technology, improvements where we can start to have other types of ID verification, whether that's, eye verification or fingerprint verification or something like that.
Rod Otey, Information Security Manager at actuarial firm Barnett Waddingham, thinks surveillance of customers on dating websites may help in the fight against sexual predators online in a limited way. What technology can dating websites use to keep their sites free from sexual predators?
I think it's very difficult for dating websites to have a technology that would filter out sexual predators. What they can do, and they have at their disposal today, is the analysis of behavioral data. So one of the things that they do is they promise through mathematical algorithms to find you a match. That means understanding what someone does, what their likes are, certain patterns of usage, etc. They could analyze that data to try and figure out what someone may do or what they're inclined to in their preferences. But I don't think that you can find a product that will specifically be useful at filtering them out.
Is it an invasion of privacy to have all this surveillance on dating websites?
Trying to predict the behavior of someone by matching different aspects of their data wouldn't be an invasion of privacy, because that data you already have. So it's just the way that you're handling that data and seeing how it relates to other bits of behavior that will help you predict. The consequences of that are not so much about privacy. The consequences are, what if you do a false positive? What if you say, this person, I'm going to kick them out because he's a probable sex predator? That person has a case against you if you cannot prove that they've done something.
What legislation can dating websites use to monitor sexual predators?
There's very little legislation today that could address something like, for example, finding out whether someone is in the sex offenders register. Not anyone can go and just query the register. The only thing would be the Data Protection Act. So if you get the right clearances from the data subject, in this case the member that wants to join, you could ask as much information as you want from them. With that comes the great responsibility that if you get breached, as some dating websites have been breached, then it means that they're in bigger trouble because they lost very personal data of very many people.
Well, I can't speak for the wider dating sector. We really only know about the work that we did with Match, but we looked at things like how to identify perpetrator behaviour online, to make sure that people respond, that Match.com know how to respond if somebody complains about something, so that they can look at it and weigh it up and perhaps work with the police more closely, make things more available to them.
What I would like to do is to encourage people to come forward and to speak to a professional agency to get the right support and the right advice, so that it doesn't overtake their lives and it doesn't make them feel bad forever, that it allows them to have ongoing relationships with people and to trust people again.
Lots of people very quickly go offline, whether that's onto private email, onto a text message. So that's outside of those parameters, which makes it difficult for websites to keep them safe because they can't see what's being said. So one of the things is to reinforce the fact that to maximise their safety, they stay communicating within their own website. And I think the other thing that they are doing now is making sure they're signposting people not only to the police, but recognising that not everyone's ready to go to the police, and there are other agencies that can help them, and they support them through that and keep in contact with them to say, these are the agencies we've communicated to, how are you feeling now? Don't forget, if you want to report this to the police, that we will support and help you through that.
I think the solutions, the real solutions, lie on the users. I'm not saying that they are responsible if someone attacks them, but what I'm saying is that they can take preventive measures. So things that, for example, you would never do, if you went into a bar and you met someone and 5 minutes later they asked you for £5,000 to be transferred to their bank account, you would say no. Why do people do it online? They need to be more savvy. When you're online, you put your soul naked, and people that are looking at your profile understand that. You're vulnerable. You went there. So your defenses are low. Somebody trying to attack you knows what points to hit.
We can do as much as we can. We can vet profiles, we can monitor profiles. If someone contacts us, we can, check their profiles out. We can dive into their messages, see if they're messaging other people too. But then I think it's also a responsibility of the individual too. And one thing I say is, don't take an interaction too far down the wrong path. Okay. If you feel at any point during your journey with this person that you got inkling, even if it's an inkling of something is weird here, something is wrong, something could go wrong, just don't take that next step.
I think the government needs to say to dating websites, we are not convinced that your processes at the moment are safe enough. many millions of people are using your websites in good faith. We need to be convinced that they can use them safely and that you are doing everything possible to make sure that sexual predators, people with criminal records, particularly around sex offences, are not using dating websites in order to lure unsuspecting victims. If they don't do that, and if in a year or so's time it's quite clear that change has not properly happened, then I think the government needs to be able to have a fallback position of, right, now we're going to look at regulation to force you to do it. I hope that won't be necessary.
Before the Jason Lawrence case, dating websites were just giving their customers general tips on how to stay safe online. But since the Lawrence case, the government, the police, dating websites and rape counsellors have said more needs to be done to tackle this type of crime. This is because these types of rapes are actually on the increase. The National Crime Agency said online rapes had risen by 500% in the last 6 years. Now, all these groups have recommended that dating websites themselves get rid of sexual predators online. They've said that there needs to be better reporting procedures, and the government and the police have said that if dating websites don't manage to get rid of sexual predators online, there needs to be new legislation to enable this.